Hi, this is Dan. I just wanted to create a quick screencast of some of the stuff that I've been working on in Xlights lately, so you can get an idea of some thoughts that I had and some of the new features that are coming to Xlights really, really soon. Um, so we're just going to start right here. This is kind of just the preview. One of the things that you may notice is all of the nice lines are nice and curved, and there's none of the big jaggities going up and down the trees and stuff that we used to have. That was part of what I did right before my vacation, was to switch a lot of this scaling and rotation code over to using floating point arithmetic, which kind of helped smooth things out and get things looking a little bit nicer. Not a big deal, but I think it just does make the preview look a bit better. Now, one of the reasons why I'm starting here is what I'm going to show you over on the sequencer tab is a little bit different from an Xlights perspective than we've had in the past. Previously, with previous versions of Xlights and Nutcracker, when you drop an effect on a model, it was relatively abstract as far as how that appears on the model. So if I drop a pinwheel on a megatree, it doesn't really matter if the megatree is 16 strands or 24 strands or 32 strands. It's going to end up looking roughly the same. Or if you drop a single strand effect along a strand, it's going to look roughly the same, whether that's 100 pixels long or 200 pixels long, something like that. So what I'm going to be showing you today kind of breaks that. One of the things that people have said in the past is Xlights didn't really give you enough control over individual strands or individual nodes in your display. And that's part of what I've been trying to work on, is addressing that concern and situation. But the problem is, once you start doing that, you have the situation where you start tying things to your specific display. So keep that in mind with what I'm about to show you, is that a lot of what I'm showing you, you need to know a little bit about my display. This is my Christmas display, so I'm going to bring up a few things kind of just so you can get an idea of what my display is. So when we get over to the sequencer tab, you can kind of be a little bit more familiar with it. The things I'm going to work with today are the star. So for me, it's a three strand. I'm going to use the word strand here. Star, 3 stars going out with 50, 30, and 20 nodes on each star. It's basic. Other than that, it's pretty much just a star. I'm going to mention this new names button right here. This is something I've added. And you'll see why that's going to be important in a minute, but I'm going to come back to that after we get to the sequencer tab. So that's my star. Arches, I basically have 6 arches that are 24 nodes each. My singing snowman, it's a custom model. It's kind of too big to fit in here, but you can kind of see the snowman. Again, it's just a custom thing. Single color white, so it's a single color thing. It's not an RGB. And I have my normal mega tree. It's a 22 strand mega tree, 50 nodes each strand. It's a full 360. So that's my display. The pieces of the display that I'm going to be working on right now. So if we kind of go over then to the sequencer tab, I've created just a small animation display with those models that I'm going to be working with right there, so I can start playing with it. I also added the whole house, which also before I went on vacation, I added the ability to add whole house models to your display. So you can do things like drop a butterfly effect on there, and you can kind of see the whole house as it's doing its thing. So this is the whole house preview, and that's the current model, and this is my whole house model or model group. So where do we go from here? Previously with Xlights, you could drop an effect on a model. So I am going to drop, let's see, what should we do? Spirals onto the arches. And you can kind of see it's kind of doing its thing. Let's add some colors to make it a little bit better. What's going on? Why is that not? Whoops. So we got some colors. It's doing its thing right there. Nothing major. But one of the things that I wanted to do was have those arches like that, but maybe have the 2 arches on the end do something a little bit different, kind of like a bookcase. See what's going on. In the previous X-sites, what you have to do is create new separate models for those, put those below the arches, and kind of do each thing. Now, what I can do today is I can right-click on the arches, and I can toggle the strands. And you can kind of see that I have some strands explained out. I've actually added names for a couple of them, and I'm going to come back to that. But now I can go on to here, and let's say put an on effect, and let's make it a white on. And you can kind of see over here it comes on. And we can do that on the strand 6, or which happens to be arch number 6 as well. And you can kind of see I have my book. The ones in the middle are doing its thing, and the ones on the ends are doing their things. So what happens from a rendering standpoint is whatever you have on your model gets rendered first. If you have multiple layers, they'll kind of all render and do your merging and stuff like that, like you did before. Then we go down to the strands, and those get like overlaid on top of whatever you had for the model. Now you can actually take us with what I've done. You can actually take this one step further, and you can expand out and see the actual nodes for that. So from here you can see each of the nodes on that arch. In here I had them, they're all white because of the white effect. Over here, those nodes are this color, and that comes from the butterfly that I dropped on the whole house earlier. If you don't like something here, you can actually drop an effect on here. So let's say we want the two nodes at the very top to be a different color. So I can go here and put an on effect, and let's change the color to blue. And you can kind of see a blue dot there. Let me just copy that and make it a little bit wider. So you can kind of see two little dots there. So again, the nodes then render on top of what you did for the strands, which rendered on top of the model. So you can kind of have a little bit more control over how things look in your display just by expanding out the nodes and the strands. Just like that. So that works, as you can see, gives you a little bit more power over what's going on. Not exactly sure why that's white, but we'll get there. So I can collapse. Then if you're done looking at these, you can kind of toggle them, and they kind of just go away. Eventually, we need to figure out how to get like pluses or minuses or something someplace along here to expand them out. And right now, the pluses and minuses expand layers if you have multiple layers, and so I want to probably have a separate like toggle button for expanding out the various other parts, the strands or the nodes, but I haven't really thought too much about that yet. So this also works for other models. If we take a look at the star, if I toggle the strands there, I have 3 stars. I've named them outer, middle, and inner. So I can go over here and put like an again, put something on the star. Let's put, what do we have that's kind of interesting? Let's put a pinwheel on the full star. And we'll give it some extra colors. Give it a couple arms, except for I forgot to click on it again. So we'll give it some colors, give it some arms. And a little bit of a thickness. Kind of looks kind of cool. It's one of my favorite effects. I kind of like the looks of it. So now we can actually expand out. You can actually kind of, again, you can toggle nodes on anything, and you can kind of see, if I zoom in here a little bit, you can kind of see the spirals kind of going around. This scrolling is a little bit touchy lately. I got to figure that one out. But again, so you can look exactly and see what each node is doing if you want. I'm going to actually collapse those down. Now let's say you don't want the middle strand to be doing that. You can actually click here and just do like an, I don't know, an on effect for white. And you can kind of see we have a white inner star because that strand is turned on, and the rest of the stuff is going around the outside. Opens up some interesting possibilities going forward. So another So this works with the star. I'm actually going to go back to the preview page and kind of bring up where those names came from. If you load this, open this up and click the names for the star, I have this new thing here where you can name the strands. So by default, it'll say like strand 1, strand 2, strand 3, but if you don't like those names, you can actually go in here and add new names for the various strands. So for my star, I have outer, middle, inner, and you can name the nodes as well. Not too useful for most RGB things, but I do allow you that option. Where that becomes more useful is my singing elements. If I click on the names tab for these, or button for these, I've gone through and added node names. Most of your custom stuff, you're only going to have a single strand, so we don't actually bother displaying that, but you can then name all of your various nodes. So for me, like the first node is the outline, then I have scarf and buttons and the various mouth positionings and eyes and other interesting things like that. So again, go through, just name them all, and you can see how that's going to be useful in a second. So we go back to the sequencer, and now let me just toggle that down. If I expand out my snowman, you'll see I have my names. So if I want to turn the outline on, I can turn the outline. Ooh, what just happened there? I think I just hit a bug because it wasn't supposed to turn everything on. So if I delete that, yeah, I've got a bug someplace here. It shouldn't be doing that. It's working correctly over here for some reason. So I had a bug that I have to track down, but you can kind of see what's going on. I can turn an outline. I can turn his hat on. I can turn on his. Let's turn his buttons on. Let's give him his eyes. And let's make him smile, because he's a happy snowman. There we go. He's a smiling snowman. So, like I said, you can kind of go through and you get a little more control over which elements are going to light up and which ones are not. And if you decide, maybe halfway, we can actually kind of go through here and say, like, shrink this down to, say, here. And then turn that on and maybe bring that over here. And I don't know why we're getting these effects there. Like I said, I have some sort of rendering bug where it's picking up the wrong channels, but I'll work on that and get that fixed relatively shortly. But this can kind of give you an idea of where I'm kind of going with some of this to give you a little bit more control over the individual channels and how they work. Now, the next step beyond this, other than obviously fixing these few little rendering bugs that I have, one of the things I want to do next is mimic what Gil has done on over here, where he added the Superstar importer. I want to actually add like an LMS importer for the lower LMS files. So you can like purchase an LMS sequence. Usually things like if you buy like a singing monsters or singing Christmas tree type display sequences from one of the vendors that are doing that, you would be able to select like for me, like the singing snowman, wherever that is, and select the file, and then have you be able to map the channels that are in that LMS file into the specific channels that we have over for the snowman, like the various mouth positions and stuff like that, and have it import those LMS lore effects as actual these types of effects where you have ons, ramps ups, ramps downs, etc. that you would have for a normal like Xlike sequence. And at which point you'd be able to go through and edit them and copy them and paste that, like copy and paste them and stuff like that, like you would any other effect in Xlite. So that's kind of my next goal is to make it easier to be able to buy or acquire various lore sequences and be able to kind of bring them right into Xlites as editable effects. Because currently what you'd have to do is kind of do a conversion to like an iSequence file, use a data layer, map them to the right area, in which case they're not editable. You can overlay the information with like off effects or on effects or anything like that, but you can't actually edit the effects. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do is just bring that data directly in and being able to edit them directly. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that real quick. It's something that I think hopefully find useful. I definitely would welcome any feedback as to whether people think this is a good idea or a bad idea or anything like that. This isn't really a grid editor. I know we've talked briefly about actually doing a full grid editor where you can have very like fine-grained control over every single like time slice or frame and whether each channel is on or off or not. This isn't that. The goal was to make it feel like Xlite, so you're still using the effects of Xlite, and manipulating the effects with your normal effects controls and stuff like that, and your normal like in beginning and end periods and things like that, but still give you a lot more finer grained control over the various components of your display, in particular the nodes. So not a full grid with very precise like per millisecond or per time slice type control, but it's something that should provide something that gets us really close and yet still feels and acts like Xlites and Nutcracker. So anyway, I'm going to get this posted, and hopefully the next builds or next release from Sean will have this stuff in it, and you can kind of experiment with it once I get these bugs fixed. And we'll see how that goes. Thanks.